leading through your team. So, welcome to the series. A number of you will have joined on previous webinars throughout the year, and there is another one due on the 9th of October. So, keep your eyes peeled on those email prompts that are coming through, and do invite friends and colleagues. As I say, Amanda sends her apologies. She's very proud that her daughter is off to university and so wants to be with her on her first day and accompany her through that process. So I have the pleasure of being able to step into her shoes and help lead us through this journey of how do we get the most from teams. Quite a bit of talk about this these days. It's not easy leadership, especially with more and more pressure coming. We'll talk about that in a moment. Firstly,
Hang on.
a recent Gallup survey said, I
You can't.
trust
Wait a
the
minute.
leadership. Oh, we're coming in. I trust the leadership of this organization. Only 20% strongly agree, which means that 80% don't agree that they trust the leadership of their organization. That's pretty difficult. That's quite a challenge, right? How are we going to be able to address that? Well, the great news is we don't have just one nor two, but three experts who've kindly agreed to free up some time to share some pearls of wisdom with us all. We have Gary Keogh. He's spent a successful years in his corporate life with family-run businesses too. So he has a great perspective on different, sizes and scales of organization. Gary specifically focuses around psychological safety, and we're going to hopefully tap into how do we unlock potential and performance within teams. Also joining us, we have Ryan Barrett, lecturer in sport at the University Academy 92 in Manchester. Ryan's also a successful sports coach and has a specialism on Lego serious play as a qualified facilitator. Maybe there'll be elements of that we can discuss today, or perhaps you might want to contact him after and find out more about that. And Greg Cackett. Greg is a former chef. That's not the reason he's here. His other skills include being a sprint competitor to Usain Bolt, and currently, if I'm not wrong, 15 medal winner in the British bobsleigh Winter Olympics team, and across the whole team to be fair, but the Winter Olympics are coming up in Milan, February 2026. So keep an eye out for Greg and let's be cheering him on for a medal, ideally a gold one. So we have a great team of people who are here to work with us. And where I'd like to kick off, Ryan and Greg, you know each other quite well. You have a connection that's quite personal as well as professional. But between the two of you, can you lead us in a little bit more around how do you define effective team leadership in sport, and where might there be some crossover within business?
Go on, Ryan, after you.
Thank you, mate. So for me, a definition of effective leadership, it's always very hard to, I'd say, allocate as few words as possible. But I'd say for me, it builds around three key pillars. Would be empowering action, aspiring to inspire, and something that I call the silent assassin, which I'll elaborate on. I know that we'll be coming back to and I'll elaborate on later. In terms of crossovers for sport and business, there are cracking an endless list of crossovers that I know that we're going to elaborate on, and just for a few anecdotes and a few stories, I think we'll be able to kind of show where they are and see where we might be able to provoke some thought with all the listeners. Great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I do a lot of talks to businesses, illuminating the business sport parallels, and they're numerous. It's ultimately depending, I guess, on how you define it, but ambitious people seeking to do the best they can and get to the top of the chain in whatever they're doing. As for the leadership aspect, for this first question, the sort of notes the first thing that came to my mind, having been in a very turbulent organization. British bobsleigh was, a basket case for a long time. It was from the Pyeongchang Olympics 2018 where I experienced an absolute dearth of culture, and it was just a horrendous place to be, a toxic environment. It was awful. To where we are now, going into Milan, as we're world top three, we're Olympic medal hopes, we want to win gold, and we trust the management, we trust the organisation. That's a huge turnaround compared to, if you Google some BBC articles from a few years ago. It's a massive, massive turnaround. And for me, the main thing is it's culture, culture, culture. That's it. If you are implementing, delineating, maintaining, nurturing, and delivering a consistent, coherent culture, you alleviate yourself from a multitude of things. You're able to handle things because you have set expectations immediately. And in high-performing environments, it's absolutely crucial to have done that by passionate people who deliver it in a way that you can see they believe in it. They're not just ticking a box or going, oh, we're working on culture today, we've got a psychologist in. It's people who want to deliver a sturdy, solid foundation to go forward. So culture for me. On mute, Pete.
Both of you guys with a very strong link to sport. Clearly, there are times when short-term results are very important. So in terms of short-term versus longer term, surely it's about getting the result now, and beyond that, I haven't really got time. It's a bit busy for that. How do you kind of respond to team leaders and sport leaders who are really focused on just now?
Greg, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah. This is really, it's a cracking question actually, because it actually kind of departs a little bit. Well, it departs a little bit from, you can say, the leaders in my game. And so the performance directors in our sport, they're justifying results to UK sport. That's taxpayers' money. That's, they're justifying millions of pounds worth of public money for the next few years. They have to look long term. It's absolutely crucial. So for them, that really was the task. How do we focus on the long term vision so we can justify the funding coming in, whilst maintaining and dealing with the short term aspect? And they're lucky that they had really a group of veteran bobsledders who were happy to do it for free when we did do it for free. But that comes back to, again, culture. And that was just intra-crew culture. We had delineated what the expectations were. We decided what the goal was, what was the flag in the sand. But in terms of short-term and long-term goals, I mean, again, it comes back to, you have to have the long-term vision. I'm sure you guys are corporate background, and I worked for 5 minutes under an eccentric millionaire in his garden who tried to start an app. It was insane. But that was a lesson in how not to inspire a team by having a vision that was so cloaked in whateverisms to make the Amazon of health and fitness. It just died a death. It just, he decided he wanted this big thing, but obviously the problem he wanted to solve was the fact he was a millionaire and not a billionaire. So there was no real, what problem am I trying to sort out here? And that vision just fell apart, on the ground level with the people doing the job. And I think you have got to have the long-term vision in mind, because again, it comes back to that culture thing. That's the foundation that you'll work off, and that will help the short-term goals, in my opinion. I don't know what, Ryan, you think about that.
No, I entirely agree. Especially on a culture perspective, it's something that takes time to build. But going straight into an anecdote for you, I'll leave them nameless. Let's say they're a professional rugby team in the north of England called the Swimming Fishes. It's probably the best way. We're working within their academy as one of the lead coaches over the last 5 years. We had to talk about this exact payoff. Do we go for short-term gain in the players, where they are developing as quickly as they possibly can to perform each weekend? Therefore, we are seen as one of the higher performing academies in the country on fixture results and on league tables. Or are we developing as many professional players as possible so that we can see and track the professional development of our 18, 19, 20-year-olds into the professional game of rugby? And what we found typically was, on the first half a season of this initial change, by focusing purely on the future and developing as many future professional rugby players as possible, rather than simply trying to win academy level games, we didn't see an increase in performance. But over the second half of the season and leading into the second season, third season, etc., we actually saw a dual effect. And I think that can be translated over into what Greg was saying about culture. Initially, steps you take towards changing culture and developing either your own leadership style and your own team's approach and culture, you may not see those effects immediately, but persistent and consistent belief in that future goal with a bit of patience, and you start to see those results.
Personally, I think honestly, I don't think it's realistic. I think if you've got a totally myopic view of where you're trying to go, and it's just not sustainable, you keep going short term, it doesn't go anywhere. Like Ryan said, that's the perfect story. You know, they looked long term. It might not have yielded things at first, but it did in the end, and that is incredibly indicative of a strong leader. Because only someone with a real steel spine is going to be able to take the weight of the potentially inevitable stress of the short-term losses, maybe, to focus on that future goal. And I'm sure there are tons of, I can't think off the top of my head, but there are tons of sporting stories that have that similar sort of situation. I mean, Ferguson was one of the classics, wasn't he? If he was, employed these days, his 1986 season or whatever, he would have been fired. But look what he went on to do. So yeah, it isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but that's leadership.
Absolutely. And within the wonderful world of engaging teams and getting the most from everyone so that everyone can contribute, because I think it makes common sense and most of us get these days, if you get the whole team bought in, you've got a far greater chance of success. And any hints or tips or directions you should direct us on around embracing empowerment? Empowerment's talked about, yeah, we've got to empower our teams. Yeah, let's just do it. How do you actually make it work so that people are willingly taking stuff on and wanting to be empowered rather than being told to be empowered? Any kind of hints and tips on that one? Greg, maybe Ryan first.
Yeah, sure. Again, I'll share a professional rugby coach related anecdote. Again, in the interest of not naming teams, it was a very, very, very rainy, wet Wednesday afternoon, an academy game. What I was working for, let's call them the Flying Sting Flies, against the London Jesters is probably the best translation. Nice. And myself and fellow coaches, I was head coach at the time, had two assistant coaches with me, both of them absolutely shouting their heads off. And I took a moment, the game was going on anyway, took a moment, asked my assistant coaches to be quiet and watch our opposition coaches, who were all shouting and effectively shouting things that I know they wouldn't have been coaching their players midweek on our Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday training sessions. The things they were shouting were Premiership level, even to the point of international level rugby tactics at under 18s. And I stood and thought, actually, that's exactly how I don't want to try and lead. How are they empowering their athletes to make decisions and actually become effective rugby players on the field if they're shouting X, Y, and Z on the sideline, but then potentially covering A, B, and C midweek? And it took effectively that day changed my whole approach on the way I wanted to be a professional coach at the time, and now even as a lecturer and being a senior lecturer and lead of my degree, of the degree that I run at the university here, and managing my staff team. Rather than looking at what the end product is, I'm looking at what I'm trying to do week on week to develop my staff and push them towards achieving that in my absence, with full trust that I have done enough with them on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for that to then become effective on, go back to rugby terms, to be effective on the weekend. If you look at any professional rugby game, all coaches sit up in the stands. There is nobody pitch side telling players what to do. Therefore, as a leader, both in higher level education and also on the rugby pitch with academy level, should I be pitch side? Should I be, even just small little hints of micromanagement? Should I be putting those hints in, or should I be allowing them to charter their own course and make sure that I'm doing the development with them in the background? Great, over to you.
I think that's great, mate. I think it's a wicked story, and it comes back to my point about culture, because Ryan has an empowerment culture. That's what do you see what I mean? When you have a bedrock of a philosophy or a thesis or an approach to leadership, see how easy that was for him. He wants to empower his staff. He wants them to be able to work well without him. I have one of my best friends is a really successful managing director, CEO now of a major logistics firm. Super proud of him. He's incredibly talented businessman. But when he was younger, finding his way up through the ranks, he was dealing a lot of time with massive stress, massive chest pains. It got really dicey at one point. And it was a CEO, and I would name the company. I've got no problem doing that, but I can't remember who it was. It was a big firm. The CEO was friends with Tom, and he said to Tom, he's like, you know, you stress out a lot because you think that the company's going to fall apart. You take a day off. And he was like, yeah, but I'm on top, I'm ahead of everything, on top of everything. I'm a young CEO. I'm trying to keep, you know, all this sort of stuff. And this CEO turned around to him and said, there's a graveyard up the road of indispensable people. And Tom was like, you just realize it's, you know, people come, people go. People hopefully leave a solid legacy and a foundation, like Ryan, of empowered staff because they had the right bosses and the right things before them. Very sadly, my old man's been very ill and very unwell. He did the opposite. He ran a business that could only be run by him. And when he became very unwell with brain cancer and dementia, we realized when we came in to try and save the business, we're like, oh my God, this is insane. This is how he's been running it. It all fell apart. So my own father did something completely wild in terms of the way he ran his business. It wasn't sustainable. That was based on short-term goals, make the next check, all these sorts of things. And it left my mum in a position where she's now financially we've had to sort some things out. We're okay now, but the point is the same. You know, he didn't, his style of leadership was terrible, self-centered, me, my business, while he had other guys that worked for him, no delegation, and it all fell apart. And Tom really learned from that lesson, from that CEO. And he now is a managing director who delegates freely, takes time off, goes on holiday. He does extremely well. So the notion of empowering people, and I know I need to kind of wind this off, otherwise I'll ramble all day, but from a sporting perspective and in my recent experience, we got back to UK sport funding based on the results that we won. That was our savings, us working 3 jobs through the summer to go away in the winter and win medals. We did that. We got the 6th place in Beijing in 2022. That got us funded again. Now, UK sport funding can't go to a bunch of unemployed athletes. That needs to go through an organization, through a federation. So there was a huge trust element that this basket case federation, who we did not trust, were going to be given millions of pounds to facilitate the next 4 years of our careers when we'd put the work in to win it back. So a really difficult task, and one that they've managed. But part of that empowerment perspective, Brad, our pilot, is somebody who's a logistical, details-oriented guy. I'm not. I'm a brakeman. I'm thick. I pull the brakes and go home. Brad is very details-driven, and when he's included and when he's empowered, the ship runs better. It just does, because he's a guy who's been there, seen it, and done it. So I think respect for your staff, respect them, their experiences, their abilities, and you will see a massive buy-in to what you're doing. It won't be a clock in, clock out 9 to 5. They'll believe in the bigger vision.
Can I interject here and add opinion? So I build sales teams for a living. I've been doing that for 25 years now. And I build remote sales teams. And one thing that I've done since, as a result of post-corona, was that basically I realized that you know, people, their values have changed. You know, so people before Corona, we was, you know, just going to work, you know, go to work, and then obviously after Corona, people said, no, I'm not living to work. So what I found is, one of the things that I did, and I've done lots of talks on this, and actually written a model which is actually in a University of Western Cape as trying to get academically approved. But it's basically, I said, okay, well, what you're going to do is understand, you know, there's 3 different elements here. You know, you've got the employee, and they have their own personal values. They have their own personal ambitions and dreams and goals and aspirations. And what the sales leader needs to do is align that with the organizational goals. You know, so for example, I'll give an example. I had a woman, hired a marketer, and I said, okay, look, where do you want to see yourself? What's your dream? Where do you want to go? And she said to me, oh, I want to, you know, first she's telling me all the crap that I want to hear. And I'm like, no, forget all that crap. What is your personal dream? It's got nothing to do with me. You didn't know about my business, you know what I mean, a few weeks ago before you applied. So don't tell me that you want to work up my chain. You know what I mean? What do you want to do? And she finally told me, she was like, okay, yeah, I wanted to run an orphanage. I want to help people, because she had some issue in her previous background. So she wanted to help other young ladies like herself. I said, that's great. That's perfect, Lana. Let's build on that. I said, now to run an orphanage, what do you need? I said, you're going to need money for finances. You're going to need leadership experience. You're going to need marketing experience. You need this experience. Da, da, da. I said, so let's put a plan together where, the next, 3 or 4 years, we're going to help you achieve your goal. It's not about my goal. Yeah, and help you achieve your goal. What I'm going to do, we're going to put together when your wages, we're going to put together a little savings pot. And 10% of your wages are going to go into this so you can actually start building up I said, I'm going to give you projects. I'm going to help you to give you leadership experience and train you and help you to manage these projects and manage it from not just from a marketing perspective, but also learn how to become a marketing leader and learn these things and learn these skills and tactics. I'm going to give you people, resources, people into your team so that you can actually start building them and learning that underneath my guidance and help. But I'm helping you. I'm helping you to achieve your dream, not my dream. Yeah. And then you saw literally we did that. She was started working 60 hours a week. Her whole attitude changed because she wasn't doing it for me or for the money. She was doing it because it had something directly, the end benefit was directly aligned to her and what she wanted. And I think as
Leon, that
leaders,
sounds wonderful, my friend, because what you've picked up on brilliantly there is the personal motivation, and as a great leader and coach, getting to know that person, getting past the front, the what people think they want you to hear. You've gone
mm,
beyond that, and
mm,
you found out what the real person is inside, and
yeah,
you want to work and encourage more of the real person. That's fantastic. People now
yeah,
come to work, show up, see the alignment with the business and
mm,
want to apply themselves. And I
mm,
hope the orphanage becomes really successful and does exactly what you and she want it to do.
yeah.
I'm going to come back to, if you can put in the chat for us, Leon, any other questions you have that come up. And if we have some more time at the end, very happy to come back and take some further builds from you. We've kindly got Ryan, Greg, and Gary with us. I'm going to ask a couple of questions for these guys as well while we've got them. But at the end, Leon, please let us come back to you if we can.
I'm
And
just here
love to
to I'm
hear a
just
little
here
bit
to
more about your journey.
learn. Just I just want to experience. So yeah. Okay, great.
No, really relevant example. Thank you. And as I said, individual personal motivation. What's their purpose? Brilliant to be able to build off the back of that. I totally get it. Around the point of empowerment, I'm conscious that a good phrase I once heard is, do you know what? The sign of a great team is when they perform at the same level when the leader isn't there. That's the measure where I found, you recognize that empowerment's really landing. Are there any other examples, Greg, Ryan, of leaders whom you've seen? Because you've given us a couple there, Greg, I know about, from family, from friends and people you know. Any others, maybe Ryan, that you've come into contact with within your world? Yeah, I'm going to name them by person. Um, but good leaders or leaders who perhaps got it wrong and then learned and got it right.
Of course. I'll come in first, and actually, I can probably link this back to my last anecdote. The possibly the best leader I've worked under was the head coach of one of the academies I was talking about before I took over from him as head coach. And one of the best parts of his leadership was the brave choice to push forward with this larger idea of thinking there's a 4 to 5 year development plan rather than a week by week game winning plan. But actually, the way that he empowered one, us as staff, and B, the players that we were working with every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in our training. And that was to congratulate absolutely everybody on everything they tried in game or for us as coaches in training. The idea that there was actually no mistake made by anybody. It was the fact that they actually went for it. And video analysis sessions came from, well, here's the tactics that we got wrong in the game, or here's this that we missed in a game, to almost a highlights reel of all the fantastic elements of the game that everybody tried. And I've seen elements of it here, especially with the university I work at now. We've got an amazing ethos that we call just being deliberately disruptive in the most positive sense. I got a massive pat on the back from my manager, who I won't say doesn't have his faults, but I got a massive pat on the back from him last month. One of my students came to me and said, "We're sitting here on white desks with black chairs. I'm not comfortable." Apparently, we're supposed to be a forward-thinking university. And I had a point there where it was could go with traditional teaching of, look, just stay comfortable, we're nearly done, keep focusing. Or I decided to go totally the other way. And I offered all of the students in the room, I had over 60 in that lecture, to go and grab whatever piece of furniture from around campus they wanted. We ended up over 10 minutes with sofas, different tables, we had beanbag chairs, all sorts. And for the remaining, what was only about another half hour of that lecture, but then for the rest of that lecture series across the week and the month, to the end of that module, I allowed them to keep doing the same. And I saw my engagement levels increase. We saw the class and lecture theatre interaction increase. And actually, I'm not going to say it's the only reason, but that was one of the highest achieving cohorts to have sat that module compared to previous cohorts. And in evaluation, my manager did actually throw a really, really nice compliment saying, actually, Ryan's tried several different things with this cohort, one of them being just simply changing the learning environment and seeing an increase in engagement. And interestingly, our student satisfaction surveys for that module were close to 100% as well. So I think in terms of modeling great leadership, I know that there's several that I've copied and actually started to realize and try and input that it's what Greg has said about culture. If we can create an open culture, an open environment where people can experiment, and I had the confidence to experiment and take the small slap on the wrist from our facilities team that sofas and desks and things went missing. But again, defended by my manager as well, straight away jumping in and saying, Ryan, I'll take the flak for this. You keep doing a great job with lecturing. I was really, really pleased. So I know there may be things to take away from that in terms of its transfer over into business. But just an anecdote for you that hopefully answers that question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I can hear facilities managers up and down the UK of the companies represented on this call starting to get a little bit worried that all their furniture is going to get nicked and moved to wrong places. But hey, what about that? But the great thing you've highlighted there is that you had your backing of your boss. You know, you trust him, he trusts you, and trust is a very deep and important part in leading teams and things. And Gary, I'm going to come to you if I may now, in terms of building on this theme. A stat that you kindly shared with us at Uspire Live back in, I think it was the 1st of May this year, was that 70% of leaders overestimate how safe their teams feel to speak up, which is clearly linked to trust. Leadership, as we've discussed before, is tough right now. Global picture, a lot of things going on, a lot of reasons for uncertainty, and quite a lot of pressure on leaders to be able to deliver. So surely right now, what we need is strong leaders, people who can get results now. Don't worry about the future. It's too far away. There's too many different things changing. Just get the results now. Surely those are the leaders we need, right, Gary?
It seems to be the trend, Peter. I think at the moment it seems to be that the tough guy leader is back, right? I mean, if you read, there was an article out about 48 hours ago from Unilever, the chief executive, talking about, I've got 44 P&Ls. I know exactly where the people are. There's no hiding place here. Like Google talking about 60-hour weeks being something that they think is better. And then we have someone in the White House over in the US telling everyone what they should do. It's a concern, because I thought that the tough guy leader approach went out with Jack Welch in the 1980s when he was leading GE. And what I love about what Ryan and Greg have been talking about is we often use lofty words like culture, but actually when you listen to what Ryan and Greg are saying, and what I think is much more useful, is they're talking about behaviors. They're talking about setting clear expectations and keeping people accountable. They're talking about setting expectations and supporting people to achieve those goals. They're talking about leaders keeping their promises in supporting their teams. And I think the critical word here is and. Like, do I think teams need to be accountable and employees need to be accountable? Of course they do, because there's a value exchange between an organization paying someone a salary and someone delivering that. But I think you can do compassion and accountability. I think you can set clear expectations and empower people. And the stat you referenced, 70% of leaders overestimate how safe their teams to speak up. That's because leaders have power, they have status, they sit slightly higher up in the organogram, they have access to more information, and because they feel safe to speak up, they think their teams do, but they don't always.
So how could a leader break that cycle? What do you recommend, leaders maybe on the call today can do in order to encourage their staff to speak up? What are the first steps they need to do? Do they need to find out if 70% is the number for them, maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, like two thoughts for you. One, the good news is you can measure psychological safety, and it takes 3 minutes. It's a 7-statement survey which asks questions like, "Do you feel it's okay to ask for help in this team?" Like how, like it asks, "Are mistakes and failures handled well in this team? Do you feel like your unique skills and experience are utilized?" So you can do a 7-statement survey, and you can get the results very, very quickly. So you have the data. If you don't want to get the data, leaders can take very simple steps. So number one, I would go back to what Ryan and Greg talked about. The step number one, set the stage. Be really clear on your expectations. What's your vision? What's your goal? What are you trying to achieve? Then, if you want to create an environment where people feel safe to speak up, then invite participation. Empower your team to share their perspective on how you get there, how you get to that vision. Because I promise you, as a leader, you won't have all the answers. And you should demonstrate some curiosity and humility to hear how your teams could help get to that goal. And then the critical thing is that when people share their perspective, be appreciative. So respond appreciatively to what they say, especially if they share a view that contradicts what you think should happen. Because if you don't respond appreciatively and you just cut people down, well, guess what? They won't share their view again. And it also, psychological safety doesn't mean guaranteed applause for everyone's idea and a pat on the back for everything you do and everyone being nice to each other. It's about creating a candid, energizing place to work where we can speak freely, speak professionally, but not worry about saving face or not worrying about it being brought up in our appraisal, or worse, losing our jobs.
Yeah, that sounds very helpful. I must admit, and I'm a big fan of this principle. And often the element that can hold some leaders back, that I've noticed in the past, is a fear that taking time to ask and listen and truly listen to what someone is going to say and what they can contribute holds leaders back, because they think it's going to take too long. They just need to get to the answer quickly. They're impatient. Whereas if they had a little more patience, took us just a smidge longer, and had a real genuine interest in the heart and the soul of the person they're with, they would pick up and hear far more, and that would inform better decisions for them in the longer run. So yeah, definitely a lot of elements there I can hear. I like what Ryan was saying earlier about catching people doing things well, identifying the strengths and replaying that helps build confidence and trust. Gary, your point there around how do you get that balance with listening, acknowledging, and at some point you may well have to make the decision which is the opposite. But if you've genuinely listened and honestly considered everyone's opinion before making the leader decision, you've got a chance the team will come with you on the journey. Absolutely right.
Peter, do you mind if I quickly piggyback just on the end of what Gary just said there as well? Because it was so resonant, that last bit, which was all of it was great, Gary. But the last bit there, where you talked about psychological safety doesn't mean necessarily we all, sit in a drum circle and sing Kumbaya and all these sorts of things. That is the responsibility of the leaders to make sure that terms like, because you said about culture, and you're right, because I am careful. I know I haven't sounded it, but I sometimes think carefully about culture, and then because I talk a lot about compassion and compassionate psychology and that approach. And because you get terms like be kind and all these sorts of things are put out there, well-intentioned, well-meaning, they get diluted to the point of cliche. And for bad actors and people that would seek to undermine those things, because actually I quite like being a bastard and stepping on people to get to the top of the podium sort of thing, they can undermine things if leaders haven't clearly delineated what exactly this means. Psychological safety is not someone with a blanket around them shivering and going, oh, please keep it safe for me. It's all about winning. These are winning mindsets. These are about empowering those around you, and getting people to engage with a winning mindset so much easier than another, what can be, because I've got some cynical friends who are, oh, I've got another tick box bloody psychological safety meeting to do, sort of thing. Because well, good for you. You're confident, Mike. That's brilliant for you. Some people aren't. And that point Gary just made at the end there, I just wanted to really zone in on that again. It is the leader's responsibility to make sure that these very important important terms, important concepts aren't diluted and reduced to the point of cliche by bad actors. So that is on your leaders. But that was an excellent last point, Gary. I just wanted to dive on it as well.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, no, there's a handful of gems already coming through. So a reminder whilst people are on the call, if you possess one of these, I know it's a little bit old school for a handful of you, don't be afraid to make a few notes of some of these nuggets that are coming out. Record them on your laptop. There are some real gems I hope you're picking up through this session that don't lose. Please capture whilst we're on the call right now. In terms of making mistakes, surely in a world where managers have got a higher span of control than they really want, we're being pressed to and asked to be doing more than the time capacity there. Gary, surely the right thing is, with the small mistakes, just brush them under the carpet and move on, because you haven't got time to deal with them. Just focus on the big stuff. Isn't that right?
No. So I think this is a really big, important cultural questions linking back to stuff that Greg mentioned earlier. So I'll just tell you two quick stories. There was a chap called Darren Warren who in the 1950s went to a trade show and he saw a thing called a dictaphone. And so if anyone doesn't know, like of a certain age, people may not know that we used to record conversations on a little tape cassette. We do everything on our phones now. But he saw that and his thought was, wouldn't it be interesting to put that into an aeroplane? Because he wanted to capture the last few moments of an airplane disaster to understand the conversation between the co-pilot and the pilot. Darren Warren invented the black box, which incidentally is red, because it's easier to find in the wreckage. Now the point is that what he did means that the airline industry has 8 decades of learning from failure, and they also know that failure is the path to success, not the opposite to it. And they thoroughly investigate mistakes so they don't happen again. So guess what? Traveling in an aeroplane is the safest form of travel because of their attitude to mistakes helping us get better. Or you could adopt an attitude like the healthcare industry in the United States, where they lose 400,000 people every year to unnecessary deaths because they don't learn from mistakes. Because people are oh, that could so in the healthcare industry, 400,000 people, I thought that was someone like violently disagreeing, which is also fine, by the way. So 400,000 people unnecessarily dying every year in the US. Why? Because they don't learn from mistakes, because they're terrified of litigation. They're worried about if they talk about the things that went wrong, they'll end up in court. So I mean, it's that's for people to decide. And I think it's a brilliant question, Peter, because do you think that mistakes are the opposite to success, or do you think they're a path to getting even better? And that's a choice that people have to make for themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. What about in sport, gents? I mean, making mistakes on a regular basis, keep making the same mistake over and over again. Surely that's not right. Ryan, you had your hand up, my friend.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, pose a question for everybody, a piece of thought. What would you call it if you took out the word mistake? If the word mistake was banned, or even wasn't actually a word, what would you then call it? We have it here at the university. I input it with my team a year ago, and with the success we've had on the attitude towards trying things is more than I can quantify or track in any of the research that we're doing as a university. We genuinely took out the word mistake. It was no longer allowed to be used. It was not well done for making a mistake. It was well done for trying. You tried something new. Did it work? No. But have we learned a new way not to do it, and a few things along the way that did work potentially? Yes. Great. Let's use those, learn those, and take those towards the next attempt, the next try. take out the negative language and any negative potential connotation, and there is a high potential you will see a very, very different feel and maybe a different attitude across your team just by using more positive words. So a question to everybody: how often do you use the word mistake, and what words would you use if the word mistake was banned?
Love it. Great challenge, great challenge. At Uspire, we do use an acronym, FAIL, first attempt in learning. Different ways, yeah. I mean, there's kind of being cheesy, and then there's being kind of what's going to land and work with your audience. So you got to balance it, of course, and see, yeah, maybe even the challenge, as you rightly laid out there, Ryan, is let's take it back to our businesses. Let's ask the question: if we didn't have the word mistake, what would we do? And maybe we should ask people. Maybe there's someone already in the organization who's got the spot on answer that's appropriate for that audience. Maybe that could work.
I honestly,
Gary, I do want to come back.
No, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, get in there, Greg. Go for it, son.
No, I was just going to say it reminds me again of it ties in all these things, because to me, you know, the notion, like all of us, we only learn by making when we're babies. You learn by getting things wrong, and then you improve. So it's tantamount to idiocy, I think, to sit there and think that you can't make mistakes. But again, it comes back to what have you delineated in the values and stuff in your environment, in your business. And I mentioned briefly that wild app that I worked at. Okay, this was a multi-millionaire. He made his money in the city. He was a great guy, very strange. He's in his 50s, wore Utah Jazz basketball outfits. He was clearly loved being like a bit different, a bit out there, and he wanted to be the next Elon Musk and everything, who he wasn't so maligned at the time. And he wanted to create this all singing, all dancing thing. Now, I sat down with him once and found it like he'd made all this money. So there was inspirational stuff about him, not for the money side of things, but because he was this creative, this visionary and stuff. And he said this thing to me where he was like, Greg, look, I don't care if it fails. Let's just try it. Let's just do it. So to Ryan's point, that ethos about trying was absolutely there. But to Gary's, work on psychological safety, whilst he's telling me that on the one hand, on the other hand, he's firing our new marketing manager because she made a mistake. And it was literally, you were being, told one thing and then smashed in the head with the other thing. So that place was it was so formative for me in learning, in terms of leadership and everything, because I've seen both sides. I'm being told this wonderful message, which really did empower me. I took it thereafter as something as, oh my God, yeah, don't be worried about failing. Like, just try. And we do know these things, but sometimes you need them said in a different way. Whilst at the same time, seeing the same man firing with abandon, like from the hip. It was a wild place to work. But I just completely, just from what Ryan was saying there about trying and everything, and then coming back to the thing about the culture or the ethos of the company, if you know you're safe to make these mistakes because you see the higher ups, the seniors making their mistakes and improving, then you're going to get somewhere. If you see them telling you one thing and then doing something else, well, then that discordant thing is going to not trickle down well to the staff.
Absolutely. And if a business or a sports team said, yeah, everyone's really important, everyone's really valued, and they never carried it out, that'd be a bit of a problem. However, Gary, if I recall rightly, back in February, you had a chance to go to the home of the best team in the land at the moment, and have a chat with them, and they kind of listened. So what happened when you went up to see Liverpool Football Club?
I was struck by how genuinely people at the centre of Liverpool Football Club's strategy and culture, like they really care about their people. I mean, before I even was given the stage to talk about the importance of psychological safety for them, they would, like, some of the benefits they reeled out that they give to their staff, and the trips that they get to go on, and the development culture there of people was absolutely exceptional. I was blown away by it. Not least how engaged people were in how they create an environment where mistakes are okay. And I love what Ryan said. I'm going to wrap my brains for a new word for that, whether it's learnings or otherwise as well. I think it's brilliant, taking the negative connotation away, the way he provoked earlier. But look, and it's interesting, right? Because I'm not a Liverpool supporter. I actually support another team that's not doing quite as well. But even that case study of cultures in sports teams is playing out right before our eyes. There's another football team who is lower in the league, struggled particularly difficult situation last year, and everything they're doing with their people and their staff is kind of playing out in the public. And one seems to be performing really well in their league, and one is not performing quite so well. So the sooner leaders realize the promises they make, the support they give, the way they empower their teams, and the way they give them direction as well, because that's also required for some, like absolutely plays out in their results, just in the way that Greg and Ryan outlined earlier.
Thank you very much. Yeah, yep. It's a tough old world leading. It's not easy managing people. It does take a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of insight, and a little bit of patience. You know, that whole kind of rushing, Greg, your example earlier of the young chap who just felt like he had to be on top of everything rather than just relax and help his team to embrace things. But yeah, as leaders, if we can have a mindset of our job is to help our people be the best they can be at their job and for their careers and for the benefit of the team, then that's a great place to start as a leader. Yes, you've got your results. Yes, you got that, but you need to hold your nerve a little bit as well. I'm hearing that come through. Great leaders hold their nerve for a little while. They know the right thing to do. And then any short-term blip, you just have to kind of ride it for the longer-term benefits. So it's never an easy job, this wonderful world of leadership. In terms of questions, I'm conscious that if I've got to look in the chat, no one's put anything in the chat yet. That's fair. Does anybody have anything they would love to ask one of our guests? We've got 5 minutes. If anyone would like to either build on a point or ask a specific question, sport or business related.
While we're waiting, Peter, you happy for me to just chuck another anecdote out there? Why not? While we've got the silence. Horrendous
yes, please.
Silences. I need to fill it. I've got some sort of compulsion. As for our team, our crew going to Milan next year, I was actually held to account by, as one of the senior athletes, I'm very outspoken in the team. And I only speak up if there's situations where I feel team disharmony is going to be affected. It's the only time I'll kind of stick my oar in. And we've had that a lot with difficult characters, difficult egos. But I was actually held to account by the staff who said, you know, am I truly holding the guys in my crew to account? One of whom is Ryan's brother-in-law, Taylor. And the other is our pilot, Brad, who is a phenomenal guy, very logical, very well thought, very typical details guy, a real, the pilot, the guy you want driving the thing for sure. But Brad's had real problems with his body the last few years, real problems with trying to be fit, healthy, train the way he wants to train. And it's been a bit of a limiting factor for our team in the push start to not have him at his best as well, because at his best, he's phenomenal. We come into this summer. This is our Olympic preseason, our Olympic summer, the most important of our entire careers. I'll probably retire next year. I'm a dribbling 35-year-old now, and it's about time to hang up the spikes. And we're going for gold. We are in prime position to do that and win gold. We've got a great crew. We're doing extremely well. We're very experienced. Brad, this summer, decided he's training the best he's ever trained, doing the most work he's ever done. So me just laying that out to you guys as lay people not understanding that situation, you might be thinking, oh, well, he must really have sorted out everything surrounding his life. He must really have got everything sorted to make that jigsaw piece work. And obviously you can see where I'm going with this. No, he hasn't. He decided this summer to renovate his house. So he's pulled the entire house apart, rebuilding it. So he's decided to train the best he's ever trained, more frequently, and double the physical workload by putting up plasterboard and like literally building a house. So for us, we had to sit down with him and have a conversation where I was like, well, if we're holding the management to account the whole time, we're talking about being empowered and stuff, but are we holding each other to account? And you realize actually with your close interpersonal contact, it's actually phenomenally awkward because you just want to support each other. You want to have each other's backs and everything. But myself and Taylor, Ryan's brother-in-law, we sat down with Brad and we said, are you making the right choices for this team? Are you doing, like, we can stay there next February and we're on the block about to push hopefully for gold. We did everything we could this summer to prep. We did get ourselves in the absolute physical best shape of our lives. Are you making the best choices for this team and for gold? Or are you making the best choices for you not to have rubble in your living room, And he sat there and he listened, and Brad is a slow burner and a contrarian and will not do as he's told or when he's challenged. It takes time to trickle in. But he did make changes. It ebbs and flows. But my point about it is that it's not that we had a perfect solution, because we live this like little cultural utopia in our bobsleigh crew where Brad just went, oh, guys, you know what? Wow, thanks for putting it to me that way. You're right. I'm going to change everything I do. the bottom line is we all felt safe to do that. We all felt safe to have that conversation. And those cogs did whir, and he made better choices leading into where we are now. And it's the same with Taylor. He's having niggly injuries this year. He's the bionic man. He never gets hurt. Niggly injuries, but he's playing a bit more golf than normal, as Ryan knows. So I had to sit with him and go, Tate, are you ever doing the golf, mate? How much are you playing? And he sat and he listened, and he told me what he was playing. We talked it out and went, okay, cool. And everything was managed. So the bottom line is the ethos was there. We all know the flag in the sand is not, I want to go to the Olympics. The flag is, I want to win the Olympics. That's what we want to do. And when you're aligned on that goal and the foundation of trust is in there, you can have these conversations, even if you butt heads, but you feel safe to do so. So hopefully that bolsters Gary's thing a bit as well. And I hope someone's asked a question now, because I did bang on there.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. We got a comment in here. Experience a small family business. Well, M.A. Davenport, apologies, I don't know your first name. What's the difference between the kind of larger businesses, corporates, and the smaller family-run businesses? Anything of note that you've got from your experience, Gary?
So I think the perception can be that a smaller family business can be easier because you're not reporting to the city every 3 months, and that's true. Also, my experience is smaller. I mean, when I say smaller family business, I worked at a company called William Grant and Sons, who make Glenfiddich single malt, Hendrick's gin. It's still a family-owned company, 5th generation. And yes, there isn't the pressure of reporting to the city every 3 months, but the chairman will call you up, and he's the 10th chairman in 138 years, and he cares about the business, and he'll tell you exactly what he thinks. And I always remember being slightly concerned about that phone call when it came, but it was very much like how Greg just described his conversation with his colleagues in the sports team. It was candid, it was energetic, it was to the point, and you knew where you stood. And that is psychological safety. Psychological safety is not patting each other on the back every 5 minutes and everything being harmonious. The other thing I would say is that because of the long-term thinking, I think someone mentioned this earlier about success sometimes in taking a bit of time. Hendrick's Gin would have that was it. It was Greg and Sir Alex Ferguson when he wasn't Sir. So Hendrick's Gin, we used to refer to it as an overnight success, 8 years in the making. It made no money. It lost money for 8 years when it was launched in the US in the early 2000s. Like, many companies would have cut that brand and not bothered with it. And it's been an absolute roaring success, Hendrick's Gin. So there would be some of the differences. None of us should confuse it with being any easier. But there are some things you don't have to do, like reporting to the city. But guess what? You could get a phone call from the founder at any time, and that can be interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And yeah, very insightful response. Thank you, Gary. So in terms of key takeaways as we're coming into land, what have you taken from this session? What one thing will you take away from today? Might it be around having clear expectations with a clear culture and therefore an alignment to the goals? Do you need to empower your team more? Do you need to understand what your current level of psychological safety is? Are people really prepared to speak up freely? Maybe you'll want to have a look at removing or replacing the word failure. Is that something appropriate for you? So, rhetorical question. I haven't got time for further responses. What I'd like to do is to thank Gary, Ryan, and Greg. Quick round of applause from those of us who can. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for your contributions. Very valuable. In the chat window, there are some email addresses for the 3 gents aforementioned. So if you'd like to contact them directly, please do so. Also on the call, we have Sharon Leonard. Sharon will be getting in touch with you all after this session today for some feedback. What worked well? What did you like? What would you like to see different in the future? What topics? Clearly, there weren't any failures today, so you can only talk about things that went well. Now, challenges, anything that you think would be better next time. So please expect some contact from Sharon. Uspire Live. We have a wonderful opportunity on the 16th of October in London town to get together in person. The focus will be the role model effect. Role models in business and sport are really critical, and therefore Can you be one? Are you looking for one? Do you need one yourself? Have you got some aspiring and inspired younger individuals in your teams whom you might like to bring with you? Have a look again in the chat window for the opportunity to sign up and register. Please do it now. Don't leave it for later. Get the job done, and then you can move on. So yes, in the absence of Amanda, I've been Peter Cooper. Hope you've enjoyed our session today. Again, final thanks to our three gents for wonderful contributions. And I think the final mention needs to go to Greg. We're cheering you on from here in the UK and wishing you all the best in the team in Milan in February.
That's really kind. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone who was part of it.
Thank you, everyone on the call.